I was living that dream. And now I had to figure it out, like start from scratch again.
What's up, everyone? Shakiel Mahjouri here, and you know who this is. He is a four-time Emmy Award-winning host, unless the Twitter bio is outdated, in which case that's your fault, not mine. Interviewer extraordinaire, Chris Van Vliet. How's it going, my man?
Man, Shaq, so good to see you. It's been too long, so I'm glad that we're able to reconnect here.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, I think we did one interview for this channel years ago when I was with Cage Side Seats. Obviously, you've been a member on the Fightful Roundtable a number of times, but it's nice to connect. I've been trying to make a concentrated effort lately to get the wrestling side of what I do as consistent as the MMA side of it. And I got to say, the fact that you're churning out 2 high-quality, hour-long sit-downs every week, I don't think I'll get quite there anytime soon, but it's a great motivator for me to step up my game as well.
Well, look, it's just 2 Canadian guys hanging out here.
Well, you know, you kind of threw my opening question straight into the garbage, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Over, under, so you got to pick over or under the number I give you. 20, okay. The number of black tees that you've owned in your lifetime.
Wow, and this is great. I wear like 1 white t-shirt a week. So you happen to catch me on white maybe month. You happen to catch me on white t-shirt day. My closet it's just black t-shirts. That's it. It's the whole thing is black t-shirts and then occasionally like a white one or a gray one. But I'd say that if you looked at all my interviews over the last year, 93.7% of them I'm wearing a black t-shirt.
Do you think we'll get into triple-digit black t-shirts by the end of your life that you've just owned?
I don't know. I kind of pick my favorites. Okay. Like, you know how this is. After you throw them in the dryer, they shrink up a little bit. And I don't know. I'm very particular about the way that my shirts, about how my clothes fit. We all. So
yeah, I
don't know if
understand.
I'll get into triple digits,
yeah, okay.
But if you ask my wife, I have far too many.
Yeah, I don't understand how the laundry and the dryer work, so I just hang dry everything when it's up to me.
You push a button. That's how it works.
I don't know. Is it going to shrink? Is it going to get I don't know. I don't trust myself here. So this is what happens when your parents.
I can go change if you want me to.
No, it's okay. We've already set the tone.
I'll go put my uniform on.
Let me ask this instead, because hopefully you don't take me 0-2 on my topics today. Ahead of the last interview, when we talked a couple of years ago, I asked you about your time at AEW as an on-air personality. Ahead of this one, I was reflecting on the interview you did on The Undertaker's podcast. In your career, what's been the single most mind-blowing side quest that you've been on? Just something that, isn't what you signed up for, but is just sort of a insane perk of the job that you couldn't even believe.
That Undertaker day was just bonkers. So it was his co-host MacLeod, who's awesome. He was the one who reached out to me and he's like, "Hey, we're big fans of your show. If I sent you some 6 Feet Under tees, would you want to wear them?" I'm like, "Yes, of course, absolutely." And we're thinking about having you on our show. Would you be interested in that? You want me to be on the Undertaker's podcast. This wasn't the reverse. This wasn't me asking, could the Undertaker be on my show? And then like, as a nice gesture, like, while you're here, I guess you could come on our show. It was the other way around. That was wild. And I spent the whole day with the Undertaker. We shot the interview for his show first in the studio that they rent in Austin. Then I went to his house without him, by the way. He was still recording some stuff. Went to his house, set up in the gym and got all the cameras ready and the lights ready and kind of sat around and waited for Mark. We don't call him the Undertaker. Waited for Mark to come in so we could record. And I said, "How long do you have?" Because we had another part of this crazy story. We had dinner reservations later that night with all the guests who were in town. So it was me, Maven, Godfather, Midian, and the Undertaker.
Whoa.
Crazy at this beautiful steakhouse. He's like, "Yeah, no, we can talk as long as you want until you get all the stories out of me." What? So I got an unlimited amount of time with the Undertaker in his house? Yeah, that was, I won't be able to top that one.
He was operating on that John Cena time.
John Cena's the best with that. It was crazy.
Get to it. We talked a little bit about this before we started, but one thing that's really stood out for me over the past couple of years is the consistency with which you've been putting out interviews. Especially, I mean, if you were to tell me that you've interviewed the entire WWE main roster from January to December, I'd probably believe you. What can you
There's
say?
still some names we
There's a few.
haven't.
We'll get to
There's
them.
still a lot of not a lot of people still need to tick off that list.
Well, certainly it feels that with the output, it at least feels that way. What would you point to as, because you've always had such a great relationship with so many of these superstars, but is there something you can point to in the nature of your relationship with WWE that's evolved over the past couple of years? Because it seems like there's a very symbiotic relationship now, and as we know in the media, sometimes those relationships are on high, sometimes they're on low, but it feels like you're at a really good place with WWE right now.
Well, first I'll speak to the consistency. And I think that just working in traditional media for so many years, I think just got ingrained in my mind that like you put out a show when you say you're going to put out a show. Like when I worked in Cleveland at the CBS affiliate, or when I worked at Toronto at Inside Jam, or when I worked in Miami at WSVN, the Fox affiliate, you just put on a show. It was every single night at 7:30 for the show I was on in Miami. And like you didn't go, we didn't get a guest today. Sorry, everyone, no show. So it was just like I had this just ingrained in my mind that like when you say you're going to do something, you do it. And if you can be consistent when you show up, the audience will start to be consistent as they start to show up as well. So I think that was number one, was just setting that bar of like, or if we're going to do two guests a week, every single week, that means we got to find those guests and we got to record those interviews and we got to make them happen. I'm willing to talk to anybody from any different walk of life. And I've had a lot of people from WWE on this year, had a lot of people from AEW on going back all the way to 2019. Like if you look at some of the interviews then, it was Chris Jericho's first interview after signing with AEW. It was one of Tony Khan's first interviews. It was one of Cody's first interviews. It was like right before the very first event, Double or Nothing. I'm fascinated by people's stories. And for me, it's looking at the end result and going, how and why did they get there? And let's reverse engineer that. All these dominoes had to fall into place for them to be at where they're at right now. Let's just look back at what was domino number one or domino number two. And that's it for me. So it's been AEW, WWE, TNA, New Japan. I mean, it runs the gamut. And I'm happy to talk to anybody who I think will be an interesting conversation.
These 1 hour sit downs that you do, and something that, has been built over, like you said, consistency, building trust with talent, making the effort to get to where they need to be, or, step up and make it work when they're where you are. As someone who primarily is doing, especially on the UFC end, 10, 12, maybe if I'm lucky, 15 minutes during these media cycles. It's a hard balancing act, right? Of getting the questions you need for your employer, trying to make it fun for the talent, trying to make it entertaining for the audience. There's a lot of masters to serve in a very small period of time. A lot of what I saw from your early channel was those sort of, entertainment press junkets where you're given a tight window to get a good soundbite. How exciting, how creatively fulfilling has it been for you, where you have an hour plus now where you can really sit down and let the interview breathe?
They feel like actual conversations. And I am so grateful for any amount of time that I'm able to have with anybody. But when you start to get 30, 40 minutes, an hour plus, it starts to feel like it's a real conversation. You can ask follow-up questions and not be worried that you're going to run out of time. And that happens so often when you're in a junket or when you're on a tight window on an interview. It's great here where you can ask a question and then they start to tell a story and then you go, oh, well, then what happened? And then they can tell more of the story. Well, and then what happened? And then you can get the full story. And like sometimes when we're clipping them out for my CVV Clips YouTube channel, sometimes stories are like 12 minutes long. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, and it's a lot of times it's just me sitting there going, wow, like, I can't believe I'm hearing this. So if I actually feel like, and you could probably relate to this, Shaq, sometimes you have to put more work into a shorter interview because then you're like picking and choosing, number one, the topics, and then number two, like the way that you're going to say things and how am I going to lead into this? And man, if I only have 4 minutes, it's probably only 3 or 4 questions. How am I going to jump from this topic to this topic and somehow make it smooth? I think that's the cool thing about a longer conversation is I can go into it and go, man, I'd love to cover these 10 to 15-ish topics. And I don't have an order in which I think they should be covered. If I'm talking to someone and they mention WrestleMania 40, oh my goodness, I had that way down the end of this list. Let's jump right into that question next. So I feel it's like an embarrassment of riches when someone's like, we can talk as long as you want. And I'm like, hey, you better be careful. We'll be here all day then.
What do you think people get most wrong about what it is that you do and how your role as an interviewer functions?
I think I'm not going to talk specifically just about me, but I heard a great phrase years ago. I believe it was Dick Clark, and he said, if people are watching you and they think that it's so easy, oh man, I could do that. It's so easy, then you're doing something right. And I think that anybody thinks that they can do an interview or have a conversation because, you're communicating all the time in your daily life, whether you're talking to your brother or sister, your mom or dad, your husband or wife, whatever happens to be. And I think that there's just so much more nuance that happens to go on in these conversations. And I think I'm fortunate that I've been a wrestling fan for my whole life. So even if I haven't done the research on that, or even if I haven't watched that match or that event recently, and they reference it, well, there's a good chance it's somewhere way back here in my brain, and I can at least reference that. But I think, and I'm sure I speak for you when it comes to interviewing, there's so much more that goes on rather than just asking questions and hearing the answers. And I think what ends up getting lost a lot is the art of listening. That's truly what interviewing is. It's the art of like asking a question and being genuinely curious about what the response is, instead of just going, all right, well, I've crossed question number one off the list. On to question number two now. In the same way that if you and I were to go out for, I love chicken wings. So if you and I were to go out for wings right now, I would ask you a question and like actually care about what you were going to say, and then wait till you were done answering before following up with something else. And I think that is seemingly lost.
Well, I'll put it into practice. Are we talking hot, like buffalo hot wings? Are we talking salt and pepper, lemon pepper? What are we doing?
I like a good saucy wing.
All right.
So like barbecue hot's probably my go-to. And if you don't have a spicy barbecue on the menu, I'll probably just go like, can I get 12 wings and can I split two sauces? Okay, great. Thanks. I'm going to get barbecue then. I'm going to get hot wings. Maybe, hopefully not too hot. Like I don't want to go with like when they have that, the little flames as the icons. I don't want like 5 flames. I want like 3. 3 flames.
I think 3 out of 5 is respectable.
I don't want it to hurt.
Yeah. Well, no pain, no gain, they say. Is there one, if any, what is one interview you wish you could do over?
Honestly, I wish I could do all of them over, because every time I watch them back, I go, I really thought that was a good.
Chris.
But there's no perfect interview, right? So I think that there's a lot of them where I look at them and I go, oh man, if I had only led with this question, or if only I had phrased this slightly better. Or a lot of times you'll look at the comments and people will be like, oh, why didn't he ask about this? Or like, there was a perfect opening to, he'd start talking about this match. Why didn't you ask about the finish to that match or something? But, I'm not someone who lives in regret. I can't go back and go, oh man, I wish I could change this, or I wish I could change that. I'm a big believer in all of the things that you've done in your life and all the decisions that you've made have led you to exactly where you are right now, watching this interview, or in the case of you and I sitting here doing this interview. So I don't think I would change much, but I think that I learn from watching the other ones. Like, I think the cliche in sports is like, you're only as good as your last game. I don't know if you're only as good as your last video when you're a content creator, but if you're not watching some of your older stuff and cringing just a little bit, like, oh, that could be better, then I don't think you're heading in the right direction.
I did that today when I was rewatching our interview from a few years ago. Mostly the haircut.
And I would probably cringe at it too.
Last thing on the negative Nancy stuff for now. What is one time, and I don't mean early in your career, but at a time in your career where people maybe outside looking in would have perceived you to have a lot of success, what's one time in your life where you were actually internally struggling the most with how your career was shaping out?
Well, the story that immediately pops into my mind was it was actually relatively early on when I was living in Vancouver. So I was hosting a show called 969.
Are you visiting for Survivor Series? Will I see you there?
I will unfortunately not be there for Survivor Series. I want to be there. Baby number 2, our little baby boy, is due on December 11th. It would be entirely irresponsible to say to my wife 2 weeks before, not even, I'm going to go to another country. I'm going to go back home to Canada because I need to go to Survivor Series. Try not to have the baby, okay?
All right, fair. I'll be missed.
Sticking close to home when my wife is
but
38 and a half weeks pregnant.
Well, congratulations to you both.
Thank you. But I was, so long story short, I had started my career at Chex TV in Peterborough, Ontario. I was working as a videographer where you do it all. You write your stories, you edit your stories, you shoot your stories, you produce your stories, you're doing it all. And then from there, I got this incredible opportunity to host a nationwide show called 969 on Razor, which was MTV2 Canada. It also aired on City TV Vancouver. And this show was incredible. Like I was interviewing musicians and celebrities. I did my first interview with a wrestler there, Bobby Lashley, when he was the ECW champion. Like I was reviewing video games for my job. So I went from like hard news reporter in a small town in Ontario to like, I'm talking to these musical icons. Amazing, incredible. Chum, who I was working for, got bought out by CTV. And all we're doing is thinking, oh man, we're going to get a whole new studio. This is crazy. A media conglomerate is buying us. Amazing. Instead, our show got canceled. And I had been there for 11 months at that point in time. And I had to make a very difficult decision. Do I stay here in Vancouver where I don't really know that many people? Or do I drive the 47 hours back home to live with my parents, drive home in my 1995 Toyota Corolla and hope it makes it and try to figure things out? And I was unemployed for 7 months.
Wow.
And it was such a difficult time, not only because I didn't have a job, but because I had tasted it. I'd been there for almost a full year where I was doing the thing I wanted to do. I was living that dream. And now I had to figure it out, like start from scratch again. And I would audition for these jobs and it'd be between me and one other person and they would get it. Then I'd audition for these other jobs. It'd be between me and two other people and somebody else would get it, not me. And it felt very discouraging. And I didn't know if I'd have the opportunity to work in television again. And like right when I was like about to give up, I got an audition for a show in Toronto on Sun TV. And I was like, I have to put all of my effort into this audition. I need to treat this like it's my job. And I ended up landing the job. And that kind of like helped to just keep me afloat. But things were tough during that time. Although, side note, I did get to be an extra in The Love Guru during my unemployment. So if you watch The Love Guru, look for a guy in a green shirt during the party scene and you may recognize him.
As we wrap up here, I kind of teed this up near the top of it. I know that we can't see John Cena, but does he have the slowest stopwatch in human history? How
he makes time for everybody.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I saw you post about it the other day, like for someone of his renown to be willing to give you so much time, like what do those opportunities mean to you?
And it's not just time during the interviews, like it's every time I've ever had any sort of conversation with him, whether that's off to the side at an event or that's during an interview. There's been 2 different times during interviews where he said, I only have this, like the first one was WrestleMania 35. I only have 15 minutes, super tight. I got to get to this next thing. And you can go watch the interview, but I'm wrapping it up and he grabs for his phone and he goes, we got more time. Keep going. How much more time? Don't worry about it. Just keep going. And then I go to wrap him up again later and he goes, one more question. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. He's someone who understands, number one, just the value of time, I think, more than anybody I've ever met. And then number 2, the value of quality time, like what that means to me. And now here I am talking about it 6 years later, or 5 years later. And you see he does that with every Make-A-Wish, and you see he does that with every fan interaction. It's incredible. And then for him to do that with the interview that we did earlier this year was supposed to be an hour. And then 5 minutes before, the guy was going to come there with a little 5-minute sign, wrap it up. We talked for like another 15 minutes after that. It's amazing. And even the text that I've sent to him, like, hey, thanks very much, I'll send you like a paragraph of like a thoughtful response back. And it's like, you don't have time for this, but I appreciate it like so much. So it's funny. Every time I leave a John Cena interview, I just think to myself, if I could just be like 1% better at that, I just feel like I would live such a better life. I always leave there going, I need to be better at that thing that he is so good at.
We got to wrap up here. As much as I'd love to do this forever. So very quickly.
No, we got more time. We got more time.
I'm the asshole who doesn't have time, unfortunately, because I booked these back to back, even though I try my best not to. Very quickly, I know you always like to end with 3 things that you're most grateful for. Who are 3 people over the course of your career in the industry that you're grateful for?
So I can't say my wife?
No. We know you're grateful for your wife. 3 people who've maybe helped shape your career, or maybe given you a boost up or an opportunity that sort of put you ahead?
Number one, I probably wouldn't have a career if it wasn't for Ron Johnston, the general manager at Chex TV in Peterborough, Ontario. I sent him an email and lied to him and said I was going to be in Peterborough during my spring break, and I was totally not. I hadn't been there in a long time. And he's like, if you're going to be in town, come on in. Let's have a conversation. That turned into an internship that ended up turning into me being on TV as an intern, turned into me getting a job. So if it wasn't for Ron, none of this would be possible at all. Dan Salamone was my news director in Cleveland, and he saw something in me. I don't know what it was, but he saw something in me that brought me in for an audition and was like, we want to hire Chris, and yes, we're willing to pay for his O1 visa so he can legally move to the United States and work there. If that didn't happen, I don't think that any of
Which
this,
a lot of employers won't do for you.
oh, absolutely. A lot of them go, man, it's going to take several months to get a visa. We need somebody now. So thanks, but no thanks. So that was a huge one. And every time I see him, he's now the news director for KLAS in Las Vegas. Every time I see him, I say, thank you. I would not be living here if it wasn't for you and the chance that you took on me. So I appreciate you so much. And man, number three, let's just go with John Cena. Since we were just talking about John Cena, there is a real lesson to be learned, whether you've met him or not, just the way that he approaches life. And I saw an interview clip with him recently where he was talking about how he just feels like the luckiest guy in the world, and is fully aware that he has cashed in many lottery tickets. And I feel the same way. And like hearing him talk about that, I feel the same way. And I just have the same type of appreciation and gratitude for every moment and every opportunity. And he said three words during our first interview that I'll never forget, and it has changed just the way I think about life: control the controllable. You can't control what other people say. You can't control what other people do, but you can control your reaction to what they say and what they do. And control the controllable has been one that's really stuck with me.
Chris, to take us out here, no context. I want you to embrace the hate a little. What's one thing you're absolutely not grateful for?
That I'm not grateful for?
I hate wasps. I hate
them. Wow.
Wasps and hornets.
Huh. Wow.
Bumblebees are sick.
I'm not grateful for the people who watch any YouTube video. Even if they watch it all the way to the end, they will not click the like button. What? Like, you've clearly liked the video enough that it kept your attention. Click like. And then when you look at the numbers, like this is how many people viewed your page, and this little tiny percentage is how many people have actually subscribed. Like people are holding likes and subscriptions like they only have a finite amount. I'm only allowed to give 6 of these out a month, so I gotta be careful.
Okay, you know what? I'm stingy with my likes for no good reason, and you've completely. I am the person you're not grateful for. CVV, I promise.
I'm not grateful for you.
I will like the next.
If people only knew the amount of work that any content creator put in, the hours and hours and sometimes weeks and months of work, literally clicking a button. The algorithm already knows you watched it. They're already going to show you more of it.
True. It's so true.
What's you clicking the like button going to do?
Okay, you know what? Lesson learned. If you're watching this video, like it. If you've watched a CVV video that you really enjoyed and you didn't like it, go back and do so. And I'm going to start liking more videos. Chris, this is where I usually give people the floor, but I assume that almost everyone watching this already knows where to find your work. Chris Van Vliet, CVV Clips. If there's anything you want to tell the people on the outro, man, I'll leave it with you.
Thanks, man. And wasps are a good one. I'm not grateful, when you get stung by them. But no, good to see you, man. Congrats on all of your success.